Welcome into another episode of the Face Mask Podcast. I am Nick Payne. With me is John Alsace.
What's going on, y'all? What's going on, Nick?
Continuing with our backfield breakdowns today. I think that's the plan.
Yeah, man, we haven't talked about the Patriots at all, and I don't know if it's just because they're an unexciting team.
Yeah, and they're notoriously one of the most backfield committees in the NFL too.
Well, just from a skill position standpoint, we haven't done any videos or anything centered around the Patriots at all, which is weird considering I'm used to talking about the Patriots as a fantasy relevant organization. It's kind of been a switch since Cam Newton's been on board.
Yeah, things went differently in New England for the first time in about 20 years. But also, they were one of the teams that were probably most impacted by COVID. They had half of their defense opt out. And, you're talking about they went to a totally different quarterback situation from Tom Brady to Cam Newton. And, I think it's fair to say one of the reasons Brady ultimately ended up not coming back with New England is there just wasn't a ton of talent on that offense.
At all.
Not any to speak of, especially in the pass catching department. Wide receivers, tight ends were incredibly thin for the Patriots. Now, they added some in free agency. They added Nelson Aguilar. They added Kendrick Bourne. Jacoby Myers is still there. And then at the tight end position,
Before we get lost in the weeds, this is a backfield breakdown.
Right. Well, I guess you're right. Thank you for steering me back on course. I guess to that point I was trying to make was I think the offense should be better in 2021, and I would hope that opens things up for whoever the guy to own is in the Patriots backfield. Who do you think that is?
I think it's pretty obvious it's Damien Harris, and I really don't think that's a question. The problem is the amount of backs that are on this roster signed for 2021. Can you take a guess at how many running backs we have on this roster right now signed for this year?
You mean like they'll still be on the Patriots roster next year, or just
for this year?
I mean, right now I guess it's 4.
There are 7 backs signed to the New England Patriots roster right now. Hell. There's Sony Michel for 1 season. There's Brandon Bolden for 1 more season. I don't know why he's still there. I guess it's just special teams at this point.
He is a special teams contributor, yeah.
James White is there for 1 season. Damien Harris has 2 seasons left on his deal. Mm-hmm. Ramondre Stevenson was just signed.
Just drafted and signed, yep.
J.J. Taylor is there, has 2 years on his deal. And Tyler Gaffney is there, another special teamer.
Okay. So it's crowded, but also
and
they'll
2 fullbacks signed, so that does tally into just backs. They have 2 fullbacks signed.
Guys that play in the backfield. Well, obviously, not all of these guys are going to be on the final 53.
Right. But there are going to be, again, just like every year, more than we want. It seems like every year there's a guy like Rex Burkhead on this roster or something that's just kind of there to take touches away from people that we wish had more touches and therefore could be fantasy relevant. And I feel like it's going to happen again with Damien Harris. I really do.
Yeah, and I think I know who that's going to be.
Sony Michel is going to come in and take a ton of work. He still is. Ramondre Stevenson is going to come in and take some of that work. James White is going to still be there and have that pass-catching role.
Yes.
So if we look at who's going to be a guy that you want to be in your roster starting week in, week out, yeah, the best guy's going to be Damien Harris, but do you want that?
So he's like a trendy pick right now at his ADP because he's a value. And a lot of people are expecting him to be the starter, and I think he will be the starter. To your point about Sony Michel, I actually think he is a cut candidate this year. They didn't pick up his 5th-year option. He's had issues. Harris has surpassed him on the depth chart, and to your point about all these other options that they have available to them, younger options that they have available to them, I think Sony's spot on the roster is not safe.
My retort to that is, when has that kind of logic mattered in the past to this organization? When coupled with the fact you look at Sony Michel for this year, if you were to cut him, you'd incur $2.3 million in dead cap. He only has a $3 million cap hit, so you'd be saving $700,000 on the cap.
For a running back,
for incurring 2.3 mil, I don't think that makes sense for this organization to do. That seems to like to have a stable of 4 backs every single year. We look at the coaching staff and the GM. None of that has changed in New England.
No.
And they've gone with a stable of running backs since 2014, 2013.
Yeah.
So that's not going to change. And I wouldn't
Yeah.
expect Sony Michel to be off this roster this season. I know that's a trendy take that Sony Michel's just going to get cut because the fantasy community thinks he's garbage. But he will serve a role for this team. And there's no real cap reward for cutting him for a team that is well over the cap right now and doesn't need to squeeze anybody in.
I just think, to your point about they're going to keep guys who can play special teams roles. So I think like a guy like Brandon Bolden is actually safe. Anybody else who might be able to fill in on special teams, I think, is safe. And I think James White is safe. Damien Harris is obviously safe. Ramondre Stevenson is safe. They just drafted him. So by that's just where I land on Sony Michel being one of the odd men out. I just think he's a numbers crunch because I think Damien Harris does what he would offer this team slightly better. That's all. I see that logic. And if it were any other team that hasn't historically kept one more back than everybody thought going into the season, every season, I'd be with you. But it's not. This is a team that operates differently. Right.
Now,
right.
One thing that you did talk about Damien Harris and just about this offense in general, it is expected to be better.
Yes.
I mean, Cam Newton isn't going to be coming off of COVID 2 weeks into the season.
But he's more removed from the injury, so I think it's, his prognosis coming into the season is good. A little bit better health projection.
Much better run blocking expected from the tight ends, which is a huge part of the run game.
Yep.
And the fact that they can open up the middle of the field opens up that second kind of what am I talking? You know what I'm talking about?
The second level.
Right. There we go. Thank you. Words.
Like the intermediate level where the Patriots have notoriously worked for the better part of 20 years with their 12 personnel, 2 tight end sets.
Right. And for what it's worth, about Ramondre Stevenson, there was a report just today coming out from the Patriots that Patriots 4th round pick, Ramondre Stevenson, has shown, quote unquote, more pass catching ability than expected at OTAs.
Okay. That's a very positive development.
I always kind of called this because if you look back at his college production, he had a considerable amount of catches.
Yeah, he's he can move a little bit for a bigger guy. So yeah, he's got some burst to him. So if he's able to reel them in, he's going to have a larger role than I think people realize. Remember, here's the other thing about the Patriots, and I know you're familiar with this strategy. What had the mantra, this is going back to when Brady was there for years, but what had the mantra always been when it came to drafting Patriots running backs? It was always who with the latest ADP.
No, it was always, there's a rookie running back, then he's going to sit for a year.
Well,
that's the new thing. And if you look, they sat Damien Harris for a whole season.
They did.
So this is an organization that does like to ease in their running backs, especially running backs that have lesser capital than, some other ones that have been drafted.
So you would be arguing that you don't think Stevenson has much of a role, maybe say at all this year?
Not at all. Not at all this year.
Okay.
Although that is absolutely possible. I mean, again, it happened with Damien Harris, who looks like a pretty damn good back when he's on the field.
He's a solid player. He can't catch the ball, but
now
he's
the fact that Ramondre Stevenson is a bruising back, theoretically good on the goal line and good at receiving, doesn't mean that there aren't players that already are in place that can do it better. So again, I don't know if we see Ramondre Stevenson this year. Actually, I've come around to that point. I don't know if we see a ton of Ramondre Stevenson this year.
He's a 4th round pick, also like Harris.
This might be a little bit right. This might be a little bit more of a redshirt year than everybody's thinking for Stevenson, especially again given the fact that they don't save anything on the cap from cutting Michel.
I guess that's possible from that point. Okay. I mean, I guess to just kind of like bring all of my thoughts on this backfield to like a single location.
Right.
I like Harris. I don't love Harris. If the trend starts to be that the expectation or his ADP matches the expectation of him going into the season as the 1st and 2nd down runner for this team, and it starts to creep up into say the 7th, maybe even the 6th round, I'm gonna be much less enthused about a guy at that cost. But if he stays around the 8th round, I don't hate that as a spot guy because then at that point you're not totally relying on him in season long leagues. It's a plug and play for maybe bye weeks, or obviously if you sustain an injury at the running back position, which always happens, then he's viable there. But I think we've kind of talked about this, maybe in circles a little bit already. But
one thing we did not talk about, one thing that we did not touch on was the presence of Cam Newton.
Right.
Cam Newton is a goal line quarterback.
Yep.
He rushes on the goal line. He's one of those kind of rushing quarterbacks. And if he has one strength still, if Cam Newton has one strength in 2021, it's going to be those goal line plays that are going to be scripted for him.
Yep.
Right. So we have to factor that in when we're talking about Damien Harris. We're not going to be talking about a Patriots running back that, like LeGarrette Blount did when he was playing with Tom Brady, got 18 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. That is just not in the realm of possibilities for any Patriots running back.
For any one player,
Cam Newton at the helm. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. He'll vulture goal line production. He'll vulture rushing production in general.
Damien Harris only got what? Did he get 2 touchdowns last season?
He had, I believe it was only 2 scores. Now, it was 2 scores, two scores on the ground.
Right.
Now he averaged 5 yards a carry, so that's good. That's consistently good production. That's the type of production that will continue to get you carries. But what he didn't have was the scoring. Does that go up a little bit this year? Maybe, but there's a lot of mouths to feed in here, including the quarterback, and I do think Cam's going to have a longer leash.
If you talk about yards per carry, guess who had a higher yards per carry than Damien Harris?
Don't tell me Sony Michel had a higher yards per carry.
Sony Michel had a 5.7 yards per average last season.
Crap.
Okay?
Crap.
He's going to be on this team.
Crap.
He is. So, by that logic,
I'm drafted Sony.
Everybody's forgotten about him
he's
in best balls.
Oh, yeah.
He would be a very smart last round draft pick if he were still there. If you're looking at him, and there's nothing there in the last few rounds. Sony Michel, I know he's a shell of his former self.
Yeah, the knee injury has bothered him.
This team is probably going to run him into the ground in his last season there.
Sure. Absolutely possible.
There's that narrative as well that we did not touch on. But I think now we've kind of hit on every level. I pretty much agree with where you're at with this backfield and everybody in it from a fantasy perspective.
I think I would say where we differ is I do think Stevenson has a chance to be involved this year as, he's intriguing as fresh legs. But I see your point about the Patriots have redshirted at the position before. So I would say that's kind of where we differ a little bit.
Where do you guys fall? Let us know in the comment section below if you agree with me or if you agree with Nick, or if you have a different take altogether. Thank you for listening. Totally possible. This has been the Face Mask Podcast. Thank you for listening.
Have a good one.